Hi, Alicia here with the Von Doom Family Channel. And I was just coming on to share a few of my favorite responses to the common, for lack of a better word, the common naysayers or the common pushback that we receive for homeschooling. I'm releasing some content about what each of my kids, their hobbies when they're at home right now. And one of the reasons for that is because very often, if I tell someone who is not also a homeschooler, if I tell somebody that we homeschool, almost always they say, "What do your kids do all day?" I mean, I just can't imagine what they're doing all day at home. And, you know, extracurriculars that are available in school are also available at home. For one thing, we do a lot of creative type things in our house. I'm very artistic. Victor is very artistic, my husband. And we have lots and lots of interests. So while we may not always lead the kids in like a specific arts and craft activity or something, they are surrounded by musical instruments and art supplies and all sorts of things. And for the younger ones, I will sometimes set something more specific and guide it out. But my older children, who are like elementary school aged to middle school aged, are very acclimated to being creative on their own and enjoy it. And my oldest son, he loves to play music, and I started teaching him when he was like 4 or 5, and he has now surpassed me in what he has taught himself from the internet. He can read sheet music better than I can. He can identify pitches better than I can. I wish I had the time still to dedicate to it. But so, I mean, what do they do all day? They all have hobbies. Are they ever bored? Sure. Whether you send your kids to school or not, they will still be bored sometimes. And believe it or not, it's not fatal. They don't die from being bored. We love doing like online tutoring, online learning, going to the library. Sometimes they have cool programs. So we've used OutSchool classes quite a few times. I have a child that takes gymnastics through OutSchool. I have a child that takes drawing through OutSchool. I have a child or a few children that took online learning over the summer with like a private tutor. So, homeschooling can look a lot of different ways. And the more kids you have, the harder it is to take it all on yourself. So I don't really try and do that anymore. Because we just have too many that are all learning, and they're all learning something a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I have a son that loves to yo-yo. I have a son that loves to play chess and checkers. And, they have different physical activities that they like to do. So there's no shortage of things to do at home. And second, I wanted to say, this is probably the one that I get the most often, is, "Oh my God, you homeschool. Don't your kids drive you crazy? How do you get anything done?" I could never have the patience. I hear that a lot. And I am far from a perfect parent. I can be very patient, and there are times I lose my patience, especially with as many children as I have. We have a lot of interruptions during our school lessons and stuff like that. I try to minimize them. So we try to do schoolwork like when a younger child is napping, for example, or maybe go to the library for something that we know is going to be a little more intense. But I also, I do a lot of things in short bursts. Homeschooling is not something where you have to sit down for hours and hours and hours a day, the way kids do in traditional school. You can do flashcards for 15 minutes. You can read a book together. It all depends on what level your child is at. And I believe in meeting your child where they are and not pushing state requirements onto them. And like when your child is in online virtual school, which a lot of people confuse with homeschooling, they're not exactly the same. We are traditional homeschoolers, meaning parents are the teachers, we pick the curriculum, we pick what they learn. Something that has, gained popularity is online virtual school or online public school. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it's very different. Parents don't pick the curriculum. They are more at the mercy of what the virtual school is providing and trying to keep their children up to date with all the schoolwork. So traditional homeschoolers have far less pressure and a lot more room for creativity and flexibility. And that's part of why we do it. Is it sometimes difficult to, never really have a super quiet space away from children? Sure. Especially because we have a world that kind of demands that, for like paperwork or paying bills, or, if you have a job yourself, it's difficult to concentrate with like kids everywhere. So, I try my best to separate myself if I have something that requires a lot of focus. I try not to do that in the middle of my kids as best as I can. But I think it comes down to your priorities. And for a lot of people, they look forward to putting their kids in school for various reasons. And that's fine. But most of the homeschoolers that I know, and myself included, want to be around our children. That doesn't mean that they never drive us crazy. And that doesn't mean that our kids never get tired of each other, right? Because, siblings can get on each other's nerves a lot. But there's still a lot of like small, good moments throughout the day that otherwise they would maybe each have separately in a different classroom around different people. And like, that's not really something that I want. I feel like school in general kind of encourages children to be, I don't want to say like not close with their families, but kind of, especially at a certain age. And that's not what I want for my children. And I know I'm not talking about homeschooling like it's perfect. Like, oh, public school is terrible. Homeschooling, everything is wonderful. No, you pick your set of pros and cons. I don't ever have to worry about my kids going to school and getting shot. And I know that may sound harsh, but it's true. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen elsewhere, but I don't want to live with that possibility every day of my life. And when I was in school, because I am not somebody that was homeschooled, when I was in school, I hated school. I did not have a positive experience. And I would say to myself, like, I will never do this to my kids. I will make sure that they're homeschooled. And so it wasn't, something that I had to consider once I had children. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do about this? I was already very committed to homeschooling, and Victor was as well. So while there are times where we're like, God, it's so hard to get stuff done, especially if we have like a project in the house or, something new that we are building, or even recording content can be difficult. We don't, oh, my lights just turned off. 1 second. We are, so we're never sitting there saying to each other, can you believe we chose to do this? Oh my gosh. Because that's not in line with our values. When you place a child in a public school or even a private school, there's a lot that you don't know about their day, a lot you don't know about what they're being taught. And then they come home and they've sort of had their own whole world going on, which can be very exciting for them, and that's great. But then they come back to the world of home, and a lot of times there's a clash between either a behavior they've picked up from someone, or something the school expects of them, and the family ethics. At least there would be in our home. And so that's not something that we seek to put ourselves in that. We don't seek to put ourselves in that position. So yeah, that's just the truth. And another thing we hear a lot of is, how do they have any socialization? Oh my gosh. Which is kind of along the lines of, aren't they bored, I guess. But one of the things a lot of homeschoolers say to each other is that forced socialization is not really socialization. I'm inclined to agree with that for the most part. I don't think school teaches children a lot of awesome social skills. I think going to school teaches children how to fit in. And if you're a fan of Brene Brown, which I am, she says fitting in is the opposite of belonging. Belonging is something everybody craves. Everyone craves community. Everybody wants to belong. And hopefully the first place someone belongs, a child belongs, is in their family. But fitting in is conformity. Fitting in is putting yourself into a similar box to everyone else so that you don't stand out too much. And a lot of times that can teach children to compromise their morals. It can teach them to compromise the values that they come with from their family, because they don't want to be made fun of, or they want to, fit in with the crowd, whatever. So I wouldn't call that a social skill. That sounds more like masking to me. And I know some kids love school. That's great. I didn't. Victor didn't. And I want to be in charge of my kids' interactions. So, if someone is being mean to my child, I want to be able to address it head on. If my child has done something wrong, I want to be there to address it. I don't want other people in charge of that. And certainly I know a lot of times when I was in school, people or children who misbehaved and were very unkind to other students were more protected than the students who stood up for themselves. I don't want my children to learn that they're victims. I don't want them to learn that they better keep their mouth shut and keep their head down. And that's the kind of stuff that I learned in school. That's not what I want for my children. I'm not saying there's nothing positive about socializing in school, but there's plenty of opportunities for homeschoolers to socialize with each other. And my kids actually socialize quite a bit with adults. Like when we're out and about, they talk with adults very comfortably. And very often people remark to me how friendly my children are. And it's not something I see as super unique, because we're around each other all the time and we're talking a lot. There's always a lot of talking in our house. Like nobody's ever quiet. So, I guess a lot of children, these days maybe aren't making a ton of conversation with, say cashiers or people that they, walk past on a hike or something. So in addition to like small daily interactions, right, that are very possible for homeschoolers, there's a lot of like co-ops and meetups and things like that. And it can be hard to like find the spot you feel you belong. And I will say that has been tough for us, especially post 2020. That was a very divisive time, and that was also divisive for homeschoolers. People that I thought were close friends, we had different ideas, and that's okay with me. Somebody doesn't have to think the way I think. But that wasn't okay for them. So, we lost like what little bit of a network that we had for a while, and it's been tough to try and rebuild that. And I'm grateful that we feel like we're finally finding a spot for ourselves in our homeschooling community locally. And that makes me very pleased to see my children happy and making friends, and I'm getting along with their parents, and that's a very gratifying experience to have. I don't know if that's easier in a classroom or not, to be honest. As far as like finding a place where you feel you belong. I could see how it could be really hard because there's kind of a dominant like thought that many people have, especially in school, and there's not a lot of wiggle room if you don't think like that. And neither Victor nor I are people that are how do I want to say this? Neither of us are very supportive of the current systems and establishments that are in place, as far as how children are educated, as far as how social emotional learning is being taught. I'm a big fan of social emotional learning, but the way it's being done a lot of the time, I really take issue with. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on that here, but it seems to me like a lot of things that are taught either A, are not useful, and I don't want to waste my time or my children's. B, are potentially good, but are taught in a way which is kind of twisted and ends up maybe harming the children instead of being something that's good. And then there are still vital life skills that aren't touched on at all. And so I know that it's a lot of responsibility to say, okay, well, I'm going to be in charge of those things. But the reality is you're in charge of those things for your child, whether you think you are or not. It's not the school's job to educate your children on emotional regulation or on, vital life skills. The school is there, to teach how to pass a state test. That's pretty much it. At least that's my opinion. And I'm not saying there aren't awesome people working in education, because there are. And for every awesome person, there is some jack behind making that awesome person who has a heart of gold, making their job 10 times harder and giving them more red tape. And we aren't fans of that. So, it's not a hard decision for us. And I want to make this kind of content because, I hear a lot of people now who say they're interested in what we do, but they want to know how we do it. Like, how can we work this out? And I want other moms and dads who have young children, or even if they're not real young, if you have an interest in homeschooling and you think your child would do well that way, I want to give them the confidence and the understanding to be able to do so, and to see that as homeschooling has gained popularity, it also has like a very different feel on social media. We don't have a perfectly organized home. We don't have a perfectly organized school space. But you don't have to do it perfectly. Kids are learning all the time, whether we think they are or not. And it's a matter of what we are filling their brains and their time with. That's what they're learning. What are they seeing you do? Who are they surrounded by? What are they watching on TV? Because they're learning from that too. Or what are they watching on their tablets if your kids have screen time? Assuming that just because kids go to a school that they're learning lots of really good things, that's missing the mark. And it's just, that's not, that's not how we prioritize things. So I would be happy if you have questions to answer them for you. We're located in Ohio, so I can't really answer any legal type homeschooling questions outside of our state. But I also have homeschooling groups I can direct you to if you are looking for assistance. And please like, subscribe, and share this video so that people know that homeschooling doesn't have to look one way. Thank you so much.